All right, so I know that some people are not going to like this segment, and that's okay as long as we're able to have a productive conversation about it. And I put aside the time on today's show to actually be able to do this. We are about to head into an election of extreme importance insofar as the removal of Donald Trump. This is not just politically based, but there are a number of different just systemic weaknesses in our democracy by virtue of having Donald Trump in the Oval Office. We're looking now at a delay of the census, which I'll talk about on tomorrow's program, relationships with countries abroad. I mean, this is way bigger than Republicans and Democrats. And more Republicans, by the way, are understanding this when it comes to Donald Trump. We cannot be distracted on the left by self-destructive impulses. And last week I did live streams of the two debates, the one debate that was split into two nights. And after the second night of debating ended with the Democrats, I took some live calls. And I got a live call from a woman who wanted to explain to me that there can be no such thing as racism against white people, and there can be no such thing as racism by people of color or minorities in the United States. Now, I got pretty agitated during the call, and now that a few days have gone by, I've sort of reflected on why and realized that it's not the disagreement in and of itself that I found so disturbing and so agitating, but it's that the conversation in and of itself is one that, when it becomes as toxic as it did, is the type of thing that can either destroy the left or potentially seriously hurt us. And I don't want to see that happen. So I'm going to play the full clip for you because I don't want to take any one piece of it out of context. This is the full conversation I had during live calls after the debate last week from a caller saying white people can't be the victims of racism. Non-white people can't be racist in the United States. Take a listen to this. Let's see who else we've got here. Let's go to, oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm just going crazy here with area codes. Let's try the, something's up with the phone system. There's almost like too many people holding. Let's try the 561 area code. Who's calling today from 561?
Hello? Me?
Yes, that's you.
Am I live?
You're
Oh my
live right now.
God, yes. Hello, David and Pakman. This is great. So basically, I have a question. It's not really relating to the debate, but I called way before, and it was I think it was mentioned on your interview with the Joe Rogan show, and it was about that tweet of that one woman who tried to get you fired from Boston College because you tweeted that it's not progressive to vote for someone or not vote for someone based off of their race, gender, whatever. Do you remember that?
Yeah. I said that excluding candidates merely because of their race or gender is not progressive, and she tried to get me fired from Boston College for saying that.
Right. So what you said on the Joe Rogan show, it implied that what she was saying was racist. And I called asking what you thought about that because racism isn't applicable to white people. And I really wanted to hear your thoughts on that because, yeah.
Who says you can't be racist against white people?
Well, okay, we have to really take a look at what racism is, because if we're going by the definition that it's discriminating or seeing a race as above or below another, that's a very skewed definition, where racism should be examining the social, economic, and political system. And within this nation and other Anglo-Saxon nations, there's only one group, the in-group, which are white people, that have the political, socio-economic power to oppress.
No, totally disagree with you. I think that's a losing redefinition of racism. You can be there's no question that power dynamics are really important in thinking about whether racism translates into structural oppression. But you can be racist no matter what your race is, and no matter what other people's race is. I think it's what you're saying is extremely problematic.
But why is my definition problematic when it takes into account the historical implications of what white people as a group have done to oppress people of color. Like, what
it's
is
just
your
not the right,
definition
it's
of
just not
racism?
accurate. The first definition you
But
gave is
what
the
is
right one.
accurate?
And so I think there's two things.
But why is
A
that
white,
accurate?
because it's not what racism means. You're coming up with a new definition. It's like if I said,
But
I'm going
I'm
to
not
read,
coming up with a
hold
new
on a second.
definition.
Well, you've presented another definition, right?
And I think I'm presenting the most accurate and holistic definition of racism.
And so for you, the most accurate definition of racism is one in which no one can be racist against white people. Is that what you're saying?
That's I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
That's
that.
what you said.
What
That's how you
I'm
started the
saying,
conversation. You said you can't be
I
racist
started
against
the
white people
conversation.
in
You
Western
can't be
Anglo-Saxon
racist against.
countries.
You can't be racist, at least in this nation. In this nation specifically, because that's what I've studied with racism. This nation specifically, you can't be racist to white people because people of color don't have the power.
Okay,
as
hold on a
group
second.
to
Just
be
hold on
racist.
1 second, okay? Let's just take it. Let's build it up. If a Hispanic person says, "I don't like white people because they're white," is that racist?
No, it's not racist. However,
Hold on a second. How is
however,
that not
it's
racist? No,
racially.
however, just how is it not racist?
It's not racist because of, okay, well, I can't say Hispanic because Hispanic is an ethnicity. So I understand what you mean by, let's say, person of color. A person of color cannot be racist towards a white person because they don't have the power
Okay,
as
all right,
the
fine.
out
So
group to be
we're
racist.
going through. Just indulge me. If a person of color says, "I don't like white people because of their whiteness," that's not racist according to you. If
It's
a
not
hold on,
racist. It's racially
if a company says, "We are not going to hire white people at this company," is that racist?
Yeah, it's racially bigoted. It's racially bigoted.
All right.
Racially, like, I think it's
The
important
slice
to
of the
really.
left that you represent is very small, but it is extremely problematic, and I completely
But
disagree with you.
okay, David, or Mr. Pakman, however I want to address you. I follow you because I think you're really reasonable, and I subscribe to you, and I think it's great what you
And
do.
what you're saying is
However,
extraordinarily unreasonable. Trust in my
however,
reason then.
however, what I'm saying is not like some conspiracy theorist,
No,
left
it's not.
wing
It's just
niche
wrong.
idea. It's not wrong because we have people studying race and racism for decades, and anthropologists have come together to
You're
come to
just
this
wrong.
conclusion that
Listen, hold on a
racism
second.
is prejudice plus power.
I'm a Hispanic immigrant to this country. If I said
Yes,
I
but
am
you are
going
a
to
white
enact it, hold
Hispanic
on a
immigrant.
second.
You are a white.
If you really want to get down into ethnicity, I'm actually Ashkenazi, but this is why this is so stupid. If I say, no matter what my race is, if I'm white, if I'm Hispanic, if I'm Ashkenazi, if I said the David Pakman show is not going to hire white people as a policy because I just don't like having white people around, that is racist by any definition of the word, and any
But
deviation from
that's
that is
so.
completely
That's not.
counterproductive.
That's okay. That's it's racially prejudiced, but racism needs to take the holistic definition of prejudice plus power.
Listen,
And I think that's something
now
that.
you're just playing semantic games. I'm going to let you go because the
But
audience,
it's
I think, is
semantic.
tuning out,
Wait,
but
but
you're just
yeah.
wrong. I would urge you to rethink your views. And I hope that does not infect any of the Democratic candidates' dialogue, because that is what you're saying is a disaster. It's extraordinarily damaging. And fortunately, I don't think it's super prevalent because what you're saying doesn't make any sense. Okay. Wow. I mean, I'm shocked by that. I'm shocked by that. So the mistake I made in this clip, aside from just getting more agitated than I might have wanted to, is that I actually completely missed really getting into the big picture of what's wrong here. Because, yeah, I mean, racism doesn't require systemic oppression to be racism. I would have been better off during the call distinguishing and saying, I appreciate your perspective. I think we're talking about the difference between racism and systemic or structural oppression on the basis of racist beliefs. Racism can exist without using those racist beliefs to oppress a particular group of people. Either way, it's racism, right? Whether it's racism plus oppression or racism without oppression, either way, it's racism. But now that I've actually had some more time to reflect about the call and I talked to a bunch of people about it over the weekend, the real problem here is that this type of argument literally prevents actually talking about solutions. What I mean by that is, I've talked about the narcissism of small differences before. I've talked about the importance of not missing the forest for the trees when we talk about politics and policy and what we want to see. I believe that clearly people of color can be racist. I believe that obviously white people can be the victims of racism. The requiring oppression to be racist makes no sense to me, in the same way that if you have a KKK member in the middle of West Virginia with racist beliefs, but no resources to actually oppress anybody, living in a rural place where there isn't even anybody to oppress, that's still a racist, right? In the same way, a person of color can be racist against white people. They may or may not have the ability, resources, wherewithal, or circumstances to oppress white people because those people are white, but they can still be racist. But here's the real issue. This caller and I would guess, would agree that in the United States, the issues of racism have to be sort of understood big picture. And that mostly issues of racism in the United States are racism against people of color, not racism against white people. The caller and I'm guessing, would agree that in the United States, historically, most racism, but not all, has been against people of color and not by them, and it has been by white people and not against them. That's a historical reality. But look at how this, however long it was, 6-minute conversation, we end up in an argument that's not only unwinnable. She was totally set in this idea that white people simply cannot be the victims of racism, period, like at a priori, in an a priori sense. It's an argument that will never solve anything. Imagine that I argued with her for an additional hour. And imagine that she got me to agree, okay, you know what, you're right. You can't be racist against white people. It would do nothing for the majority of victims of racism in the United States, who are people of color in the United States. This is completely self-destructive. It's energy and time that is being spent on something that is not going to achieve change for us. It is not going to put us in a better position to put leaders in place that are going to do good things rather than bad things for us. So the argument about whether a person of color can be racist. Where are the lines between ethnicities? I'm of Hispanic culture, but a white person, but at the same time, I'm Ashkenazi, which anti-Semites say are not actually white people, but I still look white and speak without an accent. Which category? This is a loser's argument. The argument does nothing for us in trying to fix the issues that we're facing in the United States. It does nothing for us in trying to replace Donald Trump with the most progressive possible candidate, whoever we believe that to be. And that's really why I was so frustrated. Okay. Someone disagrees with me about the definition of racism. I understand the prejudice plus power definition of racism has been around in academic settings and sociology departments for a while. It can be debated. I mean, the caller presented it as obviously that's the right definition. Well, the idea that you need prejudice plus power and oppression for something to qualify as racism is not something that is unanimously agreed upon. I don't even want to get into that debate again because I think that is secondary or even tertiary here. The argument I had with the caller does nothing for me, and I wish that I had instead said, hey, you know what? I actually don't think it matters how we each define racism. I think you're obviously wrong, by the way. Let's figure out what policies we want in order to ease the issues that are biased along racial lines in the United States. My guess is, and I hope I'm not, I'm being charitable. I hope I'm not being overly charitable. I know some people will hear this and they'll say, David, you were not going to have any sensible conversation with that person. I think maybe we could have. My guess is that mostly our list of problems could be fixed and policy prescriptions could be agreed upon, even if we couldn't agree as to the definition of racism, which again, I totally agree with that caller about. So let me know what you think, because my concern is that is the type of argument which, number one, is completely fruitless in terms of what we would gain from continuing for an additional 16 minutes instead of just 6, or 60 minutes, or 600 minutes. And if the left gets pulled into that type of stuff, it is going to take attention. It is going to take resources, and time is a resource, and other resources, away from actually making the decisions and becoming activists to really affect change. And that is why I found it so agitating and frustrating. I want to know what you think, okay? I'm on Twitter at @dpakman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. Was that a debate worth having or not? How big a slice of the left do you believe that ideology represents? And am I generally right that it is a distractive and potentially self-destructive path for the left to go down at a time where we are approaching such an important election in the United States of America? Let me know. Twitter at @dpakman.